Welcome back to live here from Pawn Expo 2019. With me, I have Michael Goldstein from Empire. How are you, Michael?
Good to see you.
Welcome to be. Glad to have you, I should say.
Thank you for having me.
So we're kind of talking to each other, talking to the people. If you're joining us, you know that I'll be going live all day long here from Pawn Expo. You are missing out. So just to let you guys know, the NPA convention, Pawn Expo, has been incredible so far.
Yeah.
You are getting small tidbits of conversations that I'm having with people, although we have much more conversations and deeper conversations during lunch, during dinner, at breakfast, as we're walking around. And that's where the magic happens.
Excellent.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you're not here at Pawn Expo this year, you got to be here next year.
Absolutely.
Great. So tell us about how you got into the pawn business.
So I am a third-generation pawnbroker.
Just like
my grandfather started his pawn shop in the Bronx.
Okay.
The business that I own and operate now is not part of that family business, but I learned it from my grandfather. Wound up working for my father when I was 12, 13, and wound up going to Boston for school. Worked for a pawnbroker there. And when he retired, we didn't buy his operation, but I borrowed money from my family to start my own company up in Boston called Empire Loan.
Okay.
That was in 1985. And over the years, we opened up 8.
Uh-huh.
So we have 8 stores in the New England area, and that's how I got into it.
Awesome. So it's been a lot of years. How many one location?
We have 8 stores.
8 stores.
8 stores
Awesome.
in New England.
Okay.
When I was growing up in this, as you were as well, by the time I got behind the pawnbroking counter, I'm a numbers guy.
Okay.
So this is back in the Bronx store, and I looked at the numbers and said, Dad, almost everybody redeemed their merchandise. He's like, yeah, we were like a 90% redemption rate. I said, why do we loan so little? I mean, shouldn't we be loaning more and kind of come up with that balance? He was, what do you know? What do you know?
Shut up, kid.
So, I ended up going off to school. I'm still kind of a numbers guy. And even in the store that I worked at in Boston, they were kind of old school. When we opened up, I opened up with a partner, borrowed some money, and I said, let's kind of do the math here. What's scrap at? What's the reasonable reselling price? Let's try to loan like 70% of that or 75, and we did that, grabbed a lot of market share. Our margins weren't look, the old way of doing it was loan as little as possible, and every once in a while you're going to hit a grand slam.
Yeah,
right?
I know it.
Our idea was if 90% are redeeming, that's where the money is.
Yeah.
So, and now that's the way it is in pawnbroking. I'm not saying that I invented that, but people of my generation and your generation, you're a bit younger than me, but we all kind of saw the numbers and said, this doesn't make a lot of sense. So that was exciting for me. And like I said, we opened 8 stores over the past 35 years.
And so I think, you said it right. Just that little small tidbit of information made you grow, I'm guessing, right?
Yes,
because
exactly.
everybody else is still doing it the old way or was doing it the old way, still lending little, selling high. And you're like, no, this doesn't work.
When people asked, how did I look at markets to go into, our philosophy was, let's find a market that already has existing pawn shops. The customer is already trained in the loan process. We'll go in there. We feel like it's easier to compete with existing pawn shops, this is in the past, than educate, right? So we would rather compete than educate. Now, of course, it's not that easy because pawnbrokers are, because of things like the NPA and meeting other pawnbrokers and doing best practice and learning how it's done, we don't find a lot of the old timers that we can go in and grab market share.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds cutthroat, but it's
It's the truth.
Yeah. So it's changed, and that's good. It's good for the consumer. It's good for pawnbrokers. Yeah.
So what's been the hardest part? You're going 8 stores over a course of time, of course, but what's been the hardest part of growing a pawn operation for you?
It's pretty simply put, it's finding the right people.
That's been kind of like a subject going forward in the pawn industry. Everyone's saying the same thing. The people.
It's very hard. I'm not really a micromanager. I have great people in place. My managers are great. I have 2 regional managers. But finding the right people, it's really hard. You need that. I always tell my folk when I'm hiring them, I say, I need you to be, I forgot the term that I use, smart, honest, and reliable.
Okay.
I'm sorry, because when I'm out of context here.
This is
I say, look, if you're smart, you're smart. I can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
If you're honest and reliable, I'll teach you everything else.
Yeah.
If you're not honest, we're done.
Yeah.
Right? If you're not reliable, you're done.
Yeah.
Smart, we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
As long as you're smart, reliable, and honest, we'll train you in the rest. And we do. We lose people, of course, that aren't either smart, reliable, or honest. Yeah. But it's hard. There's no question.
So I want to say something. I've said this on the podcast before. I think one of the biggest mistakes pawnbrokers are making is that they're not seeing their hiring process like marketing. If you were to market the same that you did for sales and pawn, that you did for hiring, you might bring some incredibly good quality people in.
That's a good point.
Facebook ads, TV ads, really, really blast out there. So for those of you who are thinking the same thing, like how can I get better people, think outside of the box.
Yeah.
So,
it's a good point, but we're in a as we all know, unemployment is very low right now.
Yep, for sure.
So it's tough. I'm in the Boston area. I'm in the Massachusetts area, and they just opened up a very large casino.
Okay.
And it drew a lot of people away, and they did it by paying starting people $20 an hour.
Wowza.
Non-tipped employees at the casino.
Incredible.
So it's tough, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I agree. So let's talk about when you got on the board. What made you say? I'm sure you were a member before.
I was, of course.
Right, and then you started coming to conventions and going to meetings and stuff like that. And then a decision you made was to say, I want to lead. I want to be a part of this, help this grow. What happened and how did that
So I've always, I fought my entire life against the prevailing perception of pawnbrokers. This is from the time I was very young. Joining the NPA, one of my main goals was to start to change the prevailing perception of pawnbroking. And I just felt that, being a member was good. Coming here and meeting people and seeing what people do around the country was fine. But I did want to step up my game and see if I could influence maybe some younger pawnbrokers. The second part of that, the flip side to that, was a little bit more self-serving. And I'm not ashamed to say this. One of the board members at the time was also from Massachusetts.
Okay.
And it seemed like anytime a national thing was happening, the board or the NPA would refer the cameras and the folks to this person. And we're very friendly competitors. We're friends, the whole bit. I was like, okay. And they were doing the right thing. The NPA was definitely doing the right thing. Yeah. But I'm like, okay, I need to get on the board, maybe get some of that. It only happened once or twice. So there's a little bit of a self-serving thing, but the overwhelming majority of it was that I want to help influence what happens with this industry and the prevailing images.
Love it. And I thank you. And I'm sure those who are watching, thank you, because I know there's a lot of dedication, hours, money, time in making this happen. But if you don't support your industry, at some point it can be taken away from you. So you've got to be able to, or you got to know who the leaders are in the industry. You've got to support. You've got to give it some time. If not time, money. Like a lot of people donate if they say I can't show up, or just come up like something to like Pawn Expo, where you can support vendors. You're supporting the industry, and you're learning from everybody else.
Absolutely. And as you know, one of the main battles that we have continuously is legislative issues. And I've said for the longest time that there are certain other lenders, other lending vehicles that get associated with us. And without the right amount of lobbying, without the right amount of legislative work, it'll continue to get, compared to pawnbroking. We don't want that. For instance, payday lenders, clearly. So without that kind of money, without that kind of membership, without people really stepping up and saying, here's what we do, here's how we do it to the legislators, not just to, and it's important. And the larger the group is, the better off you are.
Of course.
The pharmaceuticals and the banks and the insurance companies, they spend tons of money, So, I mean, we're never going to have that kind of purse. But you got to be part of your organization and support it.
100%. So go to pawnexpo.com. I believe tickets are available for next year for 2020. And I got some news that they're a little bit cheaper. So it's a discounted rate because it might go up next year. So get your tickets now for next year.
And it's at the Paris.
It's at the Paris next year.
Paris next year.
It's a great hotel. Vegas is just a lot of fun.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's Vegas.
Right? It's fun. You still can bring your family. They don't market it quite as much to families anymore, but you can bring them. There's pools. There's things for the kids to do. I mean, you can't beat Vegas.
And like last night, we didn't go out to a bar to top golf. And people played some golf. Some balls, had a great conversation. It was awesome. So I just want to say hello to people watching. Anastasia, 3 for 3, love it. Thank you. Renee, what's up, brother? Louis is the guy who makes the podcast happen.
Nice.
So Louis, thanks for watching, brother. Mike, thank you so much for being on the show.
Welcome, man.
Have a great
I loved
show.
it. Yeah, thanks.
Take care.
All right, take care, guys.